In conversation with Treena Orchard. Treena Orchard is an anthropologist, author, and activist in the School of Earth Studies at Western University. He researches and engages in activist debate about sexuality, gender, and health among diverse cultural and digital communities. Deeply committed to public scholarship, he regularly writes for and is featured in leading online publications, including Cosmopolitan, Men's Health, The National Post, and The Conversation. And on today's episode of Author Interview, it's my utmost pleasure, joy, and excitement to have on the show today, Treena Orchard. How are you doing, Treena?
Doing great. It's Friday morning. It's not afternoon yet. I'm getting ahead of myself. Friday morning, the end of a busy week, and it's really nice
Oh,
to be chatting with you about my book and literature and yeah.
absolutely. It's my pleasure as well. It's an hot afternoon here in Nigeria, and it's lovely to have you on the show today. Quite exciting how we're having a different time travel, I'd say. Good idea for a
Yes.
sci-fi novel.
Yes.
Thanks
Right.
for coming on. It's really nice to have you here today. Yeah, so Trina, I want to first say that you've written a very important book, especially in our current digital age where people search for love over the internet space. And I found the description page of sticky, sexy, sad, sweet culture and the darker side of dating apps to be quite compelling. And I would like to ask you, what inspired you to write this book?
Yeah, I think, it's interesting when I began swiping
Hmm.
at the tender age of 45.
Oh.
I had lots of concerns and I hadn't dated for a while. I had no intentions of writing a book. I was just going to be enough for me to figure out these dating apps because I'm kind of a Flintstone. I'm a very much in the dark about technology.
Hmm.
It took a lot for me to gather the courage just to download the app. But then I began encountering a lot of challenging situations, but a lot of compelling situations too, as an anthropologist to study sexuality.
Hmm.
It just seemed like I needed to be documenting it, and I began writing as a way to manage the chaos and confusion, honestly. And
Hmm.
then I began looking at my notes and thinking, I think there's kind of something unique here from my perspective as a sexuality researcher and also a midlife woman. So that kind of
Hmm.
inspired me to write the book.
Oh wow, that's such a lovely introduction into becoming an author. That's a lovely introduction into becoming a writer. That's quite fun. Thanks for sharing. And now, just in case of readers who haven't read the book yet, or the would-be reader looking forward to, would you like to tell us some of the themes we'd expect in terms of themes and subject line, picking up sticky, sexy, and sad? And if you have a copy of the book there, please raise to the camera just so you see what it looks like.
So this is what the book looks like. It has a very, very beautiful cover, I
Beautiful
must say,
cover.
and
I
covers are
love
important.
it.
Yeah, the art is, it's capturing a flower, which is luscious, but then there's also little prickly parts because it's part of a flower that comes from a cactus. So you
Oh,
get that like luscious floral, but then you also get the sticky, painful things, which is true
mm,
about love. It's true about romance. Dating is always difficult and weird and exciting, right? No
yeah,
matter if it's in person or online. But in terms of the main themes in the book,
yeah.
it has to do with the things that I'm an expert in terms of my research. So we've got sexuality,
Mm,
how these dating apps are impacting sexuality, relationships. We have information about gender, how do men experience these apps? How
mm.
are women experiencing them? And then also there's a chapter 5, which is all about love,
Oh,
not just about love on the dating apps, how I learned about love, how people have emailed me their romantic challenge success stories over the years. There was a really
wow.
interesting way that love can be a portal that people want to enter into and talk about their own lives with.
Mm,
That's
wow.
a really cool way to connect as well. Chapter 4 is looking at technology and the way that us using very similar platforms around the world is transforming intimacy in the sense that a lot of us are having intimate experiences, dating stories that are
Yeah.
nearly identical. identical, which is creepy.
Mm.
And I was chatting about some of this in my early swiping days with one of my students, and she said to me, "Oh, your experiences are identical to ours."
Oh,
And I just
wow.
about died because it's like, you're 25 years younger than me. In the past, when apps were nowhere, my dating life was my own. It was very unique. It was a bit dangerous and wild, but it
Mm.
certainly was my own. But now it's like we can almost tell each other's story verbatim. So
Honestly.
those are some of the themes that the book explores.
Oh, wow. Nowadays, it looks as if it's a common experience. It's a common dating experience, especially if you're going through the apps. That sounds to be quite amazing, really. Thanks for sharing.
Mhm.
Yeah, yeah. And also, Trina, knowing that this is such an uncommon theme in the field of literature, I would like to ask you, how has the book been received so far? What has been the feedback from readers so far?
I think that it's not really an uncommon theme anymore. I think
Yeah,
it's one that is really emerging. There has been quite a few books published about like online computer, like old-timey kind of online dating
yeah,
over the years. And that since the dating apps came around 2012, 2009, depending on which ones you're using, there have
yeah.
been quite a few books that have explored it, but none of them have explored it through the lens of an anthropologist and
Mm,
a woman in her midlife. So that is super unique. In terms of the reception of the book, it's been received really well. Women tend to respond and say, "Thank you, I feel seen, thank you."
mm.
And men have also reached out in
Wow,
significant numbers, and they have
wow.
said thank you, but for different reasons. They say thank you because I can sort of teach them a little bit about how women experience these apps.
Mm,
And also, a lot of the experiences that men have in the book, masculinity is in flux. It's changing. A lot of men are feeling a bit uncertain about how to be a man.
mm.
And so I write about that with sensitivity and curiosity. And a lot of men really appreciate that. And so that's pretty compelling.
Oh, wow. That's really amazing. And I agree with you. That's really compelling. Oh, wow. That's so beautiful to know. Thanks for sharing.
Mhm.
Now, which chapter was the most challenging to write and why? I know you've talked a bit about this, yeah, especially in the men's perspective. But then, which chapter was the most challenging to write and why? Also,
Yeah.
will I be right or wrong to assume that some of these chapters were written based on your personal experience with dating apps?
Well, it's a memoir, so absolutely, right? It's not
Oh,
an academic study. So this book is a memoir and it combines cultural critique, but it's
oh,
first and
interesting.
foremost, it's a memoir. So it's completely about my lived experience. So enjoy. Um, and in terms of the hardest chapter, chapter 4. And that is the one that I was just speaking about that looks at technology and the implications of how technology is changing the way we date, we communicate, how we
Yeah.
rely on these apps. That is the most unique chapter, and I really had to dive into a number of different kinds of resources to sort of make sense and flesh out the argument
Oh,
that I
wow.
was making. So yeah, that was the hardest.
Oh, wow. That is so amazing. Yeah. And I love your take on that. And thank you so much for talking about the chapter 4 being a bit tricky. Yeah.
Mhm.
Now I want to diversify a bit into artificial intelligence. Yeah. I'd like to ask you, just my take, yeah, or just your take. What role does AI play in dating and relationship going forward? I know it's a digital age, and even on dating app, we have some people who feign to be what they are not. People who
Yeah,
hide under the mask of someone else, just trying to use someone else's picture, why you're not the actual person in there. Yeah, now in terms of AI now, what role does AI play in dating and relationship going forward? Now, after that, I love to ask you another question about deception. Yeah, let's go for with that.
sure.
Yet.
Yes. AI is a huge topic, and it's one of the things that people ask me the most when I'm doing interviews like this.
Mm,
And, there are dating coaches out there that can provide you with how to make your profile stand out, what kinds of questions you should ask on the first date or the second date. There are ways that AI can sort of help sort through the different perspective matches so that you don't spend so much time. And it takes a lot of time, it seems, to find a decent match or two on these apps. So
Mm,
when an AI sort of platform is doing it for you, it can certainly save time.
yeah.
But one of the things about AI is that or when I was on dating apps, I was often dating people outside the box. I would
Mm,
try different kinds of individuals that I might not have normally gone for in the past. And
oh.
I'm not sure that AI would allow for the variety and the diversity that could just happen spontaneously. In
Mm,
fact, it probably cannot. And so it might exclude some people who might be really promising in terms of friends or intimate partners. So but there's a lot to be seen in terms of how deep we take AI with us. Some people never want to leave their phones. Some people don't want to do in person for a variety of reasons.
wow.
But for those of us who are interested in person to person situations, I think it's an untold story. I think we're still going to be discovering a lot going forward.
Oh, yeah. Oh, that's actually amazing. Very lovely. Now, I would like us to talk about deception on dating apps. Yeah, I just pop up in my head and I feel, oh, this is something I love to talk about. More than often, or often than not, we often encounter some silly people. It's very hard to deal with people. Yeah, and some of the things that might make this app to be a bit frustrating is the fact that the person you're speaking with might end up not to be who they say they are. Yeah, in terms of deception, using someone else's picture or using someone else's, identity. And, have you ever experienced any sort of deception on the app? Or what's your take on deception on dating app? Yeah, let me put it that
Oh,
way.
yes. In chapter one, I have a case study when I was catfished, and I talk,
Oh,
it's many people, anyone who's used dating apps has probably been catfished. When someone uses a different picture of themselves that doesn't look anything like they look now, or they use entirely someone else's information and entirely someone else's photo.
mm,
It's extremely common for many, many reasons. I think one of the reasons is that for a very long time, there were no repercussions for bad actors. People could treat other people with profound disrespect and violence, and they could just hop off one app and go on another one. And the security piece is really important, and that's an area that the current dating
yeah,
apps really need
work
to
on.
enhance.
Yeah.
And people are deceptive because they're afraid. They're afraid of being rejected. We don't
Mm,
have a great sex ed, discourse, and we're not really socialized all that well to know how to manage the ups and downs of dating. We often say, oh,
yeah,
dating, that's just what people when they're young that they do. It's kind of like looked at as kind of a juvenile thing compared to marriage, or other more
yeah,
formal things which gets a lot more press than dating. It's been made sort of juvenile. So I think we've been given these apps, but very little in terms so how do we want to use them? And how might we not want to use them? And who is in control of things like safety? And there are people who are just kind of out there to create mayhem for people and create trouble. And really, truly, and sometimes it can be funny, but sometimes it can lead to really violent situations. There's been
yeah,
lots of evidence how dating
absolutely.
apps are connected with certain kinds of violence, often male against female.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Oh wow, that's very true. I think, and there, while there's some who are particularly out there to make friendship, or perhaps are lonely and they look for someone to speak with,
Mhm.
yeah, it can be
Mhm.
very, very. It's actually dating apps are meant to be something very nice for people to go on, yeah, and find love or find people they're interested in,
Mhm.
yeah. But I think along the line, people tends to abuse things. They tends to
Mhm.
go against the rules and regulation, yeah, and
True.
it tends to make everything to be quite messy. And that's why it is
Mhm.
sometimes too very advisable to be very careful on the apps. Yeah, I think
Mhm.
that's a very good one you've mentioned there.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, thank you. Now, Trina, one of the most interesting thing to me as a writer is to listen to readers' feedback. I know we've touched a bit about this, yeah, but I also like to
Mhm.
ask you, and you may want to agree with me that one of the things that make literature to be complex in its entirety especially one like yours that's not a bit common. It's the fact that it can be interpreted by different ways by different readers. Sometimes the readers might get the message intended by the author. Sometimes they might be close to getting the message, and sometimes they might be entirely far from it. But now I'd like to ask you, as interesting and funny as it sounds, I'd like to ask you, how do you feel when readers interpret your works differently than you intended?
Well, I think that that's all part of the process. That's the magic of books. We create them and we don't know,
Mm,
how people are going to receive them. And I'm confident in the product. I'm confident in what it contributes.
yeah,
And sometimes the way that other people interpret it, it can open up new questions for me.
yeah,
I'm not a rigid person. Like, if you don't like the book the way I did it, then I'm going to get angry or frustrated. So far the reception has been very nice. Now, when I
mm,
have written like online articles, I've been trolled and been receiving like very disgusting, violent, misogynistic messages from many, 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 many people over the years. That is a very unpleasant experience. But the
yeah.
book has been received very nicely. There have been a couple of lower ratings on Amazon and stuff like that, but that's all part of it. You don't think the book is going to be loved and adored by everyone because that's not realistic, right? And so I welcome different interpretations of it.
Interesting. Oh, well, I love to pick in from there. One of the things you mentioned, and I think I have been on dating app to myself in the past year. What I don't like about this is the fact that the messages there are not entirely so welcoming to me. Yeah, somebody can just bump into your DM and start saying some silly things, yeah. And I'm like,
Mhm.
my goodness, can't you just calm down? Can't you just
Right.
calm down and start a conversation like a reasonable person? Yeah, it's
Hmm.
one of the things, and I'll be like, oh, goodness, okay, this is a lot. I'm the one that is looking for what is not lost, yeah. So I'm gonna go ahead now and delete the app, yeah. This is one of the
Hmm.
experiences people get to experience unsolicited, crazy, silly, extreme. I know, well, I know I am going on a dating app. I should expect that, but some people go
Hmm.
overly too much with it.
Yeah.
I mean, you ask
Yeah.
me, can you send me this? Can you stop like, "Hey, what are you talking about?"
Yeah. And that's because I think we really haven't talked about how are we supposed to use these things. And
Honestly,
because we are such a highly sexualized society, and
absolutely.
very conflicting messages.
Yeah.
Certain kinds of images are what we're supposed to be, trying to model our bodies and our lives
Mm,
after. And then there's like all these different kinds of restrictions on different communities, whether you're female, queer, straight,
mm,
anything. And so I think people are using these in a really misguided, confused way that in many ways
absolutely.
reflects our very misguided and confused sort of society in terms of sex, gender, and relationships. We don't have it figured out well. So, of
Yeah,
course, that messiness, as you say, is going to flow into the apps too,
absolutely. Oh,
right?
wow, this is such a beautiful conversation, really, and not one that's even common in an interview. Very
Mhm.
nice. Now, I'd like to ask you, Trina, apart from sticky, sexy, sad, culture, and the dark side of dating apps, do you have any other works you've authored or say currently working on?
Well, I've got a few different books that I've
Oh,
mapped out, and I need to get a new literary agent.
oh,
So I have to choose one or two of them and begin developing a book proposal. One of them is going to be about men's experiences in terms of gender, sexuality, vulnerability, masculinity. Another one might be about women's experiences in midlife, is particularly Gen X women, because I'm a Gen Xer.
oh,
And I might save the other two like as a surprise. But I've got lots of different projects and ideas that I'd like to pursue. And I've written previously on different aspects of prostitution in my
oh,
research and colleagues in China as well as America. And then I've
wow.
also got another book about an arts-based research approach that I've used in my studies. So this is my
Mm.
third book, but my first memoir.
Oh, wow. Oh, that's
Yeah.
very beautiful. That's very amazing of you. Thank you so much for sharing. Yeah. Now, could you tell us what publishing is like for a published author like yourself? Are there any
Mhm.
challenges you've encountered? the process of writing this book and also ever since it got published?
Yes, many. Um, I mean, the writing part is difficult, but I've been writing for over 20 years as an academic.
Oh,
So, but learning about the publishing and not academic publishing, but more mainstream publishing world has been wild and confusing
mm,
and a lot of information to digest to be able to understand how books are sold, understand
yeah.
how marketing works, understand the author's responsibility, understand different kinds of social media stuff. How do you plan a
Mhm.
book launch? What makes a successful book launch?
Absolutely.
And just the emotional roller coaster that you go
Yeah,
through. Because the day that the book comes out has 24 hours, just like the one before it, and just like the one after it.
yeah.
I am not so famous yet. Like, it's not like my world changed overnight, and it's a steady grind. There's a
Yeah,
lot that is, the author has to do a lot of that promotion and that kind of work.
absolutely.
And there's like the questions, do people like it? What do they think of me? All of these things are part of it. And it was quite stressful. It's been down. I'm kind of definitely feeling more comfortable and I've learned so much, but it was hard on me. It was hard on me emotionally. It was exciting, but I
Yeah.
don't want to just say, "Oh, it was just wonderful," because that's not honest. And so many authors talk about how difficult it is emotionally to go through the process.
Oh, wow. Oh, wow, that's such a lovely discussion you've got there. Thank you so much for your answer. I find it to be very nice, and I've been enjoying the conversation so far. Very educative, a bit deep dive into the act of dating apps and so many of it. That's very great. Thanks for sharing.
Mhm.
Yeah. Well, before we wrap up for today, is there anything that you would love to share with the viewers about your books that we did not mention in this interview? I'd love the viewers to know. Is there anything?
Yeah, I think if people are out there using dating apps,
Yeah.
just a few words of advice that might come in handy as you're
Okay.
trying to navigate the wild world that it is.
Mm,
One of the most important things I think is to have scheduled times when you use the app. I did not. So I was all over the place all the time, just like a mad
oh,
woman. And
oh.
so that will allow you to just be really more directive in terms of when you spend those energies. Another thing is that sort of be prepared for it to be weird and challenging and take a lot of time because that's the way they're currently designed. It takes a while. It takes a while to comb through all the people.
Mm,
And also, when people are, or if they are, treating you with disrespect, if you feel safe, you can, call them out on that. I did that a number of times with people, similar to the example that you provided when people slip into your DMs and things and they're saying stuff that is not welcome
mm,
or, not yet. It's okay to say, I don't really like the way you're talking to me. And sometimes they'll take it badly or, but then other times I had a number of people say, you know what, you're right, my bad. I shouldn't
mm.
do that. And then that actually opened up some more authentic conversations about how they were
Conversation.
doing, right?
Yeah.
And I think also don't rely too much on the apps. We let technology control far too much of our life.
Honestly.
And that in real life events, sporting events, different kinds of activities that you're interested in,
Yeah.
those are also great places to think about in terms of meeting new people.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's very, very thoughtful. I love the fact that you mentioned that so many places. It could be in the restaurant, it could be in the
Yeah.
gym, it could be at
Hmm.
church, it could be anywhere actually. It could be at
Yep.
events, if you're a fan of
Yes.
attending event centers.
Yep.
It could be so many places. It could be on the walkway, yeah. Could be
Yep.
anywhere. Yeah, but so far
Hmm.
for me, so far I've been able to have conversation in the bank, yeah. Banks, in
Hmm.
at the restaurant, yeah, and
Yep.
at events, yeah, at local gathering, very good fun local gathering, and so many
Hmm.
other places where people come together to connect and network.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's very good. I like the fact that you mentioned because these things can actually be time consuming, especially if you're new to it. You can be very overwhelmed that, oh, I'm gonna have to spend before you know what is happening, you spend the entire day on the app doing nothing productive for the day.
Right.
Yeah. So I love the fact that you mentioned that you have to prioritize your time, find a particular time that you have to
Yeah,
be on the app, not to spend it because it will take your time. And
it
before you know
will.
what is happening, 1 day, 2 day, 3 days, you become engrossed and addicted to the app already. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a very good advice you've got in there. Thanks
Yeah,
for
yeah.
sharing.
Try, don't do as I did. Sometimes the book is described as a public service. Like, this is what she did, learn from her mistakes. Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing. Now, just in case we have some viewers who are currently watching this interview, I would love to get a copy of the book. On what platform is it available on for purchase?
It's available wherever you buy books, whether it's an independent bookstore or a more mainstream bookstore online. If your local bookstore doesn't have it, they can order it in. It's also available on the University of Toronto website. That's the publisher.
Oh,
Yeah.
interesting. That's
And
amazing.
it's also available in audio format on Audible, and I read it. So that's kind of cool too.
Yeah. And I left a link in the discussion part of this interview where interested viewers can get a copy of Treena Orchard books directly on Amazon and our website on the mentioned site as well, and also another platform. I also left links to social media pages for possible followings. So thank you so much, Treena, for accepting the invitation to be featured on P English Literature. I must say it's more than awesome having this lovely conversation around dating apps, your book, your memoir. It's been fun so far. Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, it was great. Thank you for inviting me.